All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the community questions segment for the first Agnes Water Community Forum. We've received several questions through the Conversations website, which is our engagement website. We had that open to the public, and the public were able to vote on the questions that they had the most interest in hearing a response to. So we've got the top 5, which we'll be responding to first of all today. And then if we have some more time, we'll extend it to questions from the floor. So the first question we have is, why is council removing kayaks and watercraft from the foreshore? So to address that one, I have Ali Moore, our Manager of Environment and Conservation.
No, thanks, Tim. So there were several reasons that we considered in relation to the removal of kayaks. Part of those considerations were maritime safety's war on watercraft, which was the removal of a number of kayaks and other watercraft across the foreshore area. We also considered the environmental impact that there is on that vegetation area and the coastal erosion. And there is also a heritage listing over the whole entire 1770 Peninsula as well. We also looked at the local law, which currently prohibits the storing of any goods like that on council-controlled land and reserves. So 2 years ago, we did concentrate them into that smaller area due to being able to have them stored somewhere while we looked at what those long-term solutions were. We did consider 4 or 5 options in terms of storage, and options. One was do nothing and just let them stay there. The numbers are accumulating though. We also considered total prohibition, which is what we've gone with at the moment. We considered storage of them and building storage racks either where they are or in the adjacent parkland area, and considered whether we do a permit with that one as well. However, those options were ruled out simply because we know the community also value the parkland area and using the entire parkland area. Obviously, there's safety impacts and liability considerations as well. So when we put all of those impacts and those challenges together, the decision we came to was that the local law is where we stand at the moment, which is total prohibition. We are aware of a proposal that may be coming towards us, and we have got some questions today about potential extensions of timeframes, which we'll take back and consider on Monday and get some communications back out to everybody once we've considered that.
Thank you very much. Don't go too far, Ali. The next one's for you as well. The next question we have is, what more can council do to protect rainbow bee-eater colony at the SES grounds?
Thanks, Tim. So the rainbow bee-eaters are definitely a beautiful bird. They are abundant in our region. We have them in a lot of our flat, mown coastal areas where there is lots of sand, particularly at the SES grounds here in Agnes. We work with the Department of Environment and Science and Innovation around species management plans and what we need to do to protect those breeding areas. So currently, 2 years ago, we installed bollards in the area to try and limit the heavy vehicle impacts that potentially have on the underground burrows. We have also gone through local law amendments in the process of getting permanent signage in the areas, and also looking at what the dog on and off leash rules look like at the moment. And also looking at whether we mow or don't mow the area, depending on whether we want to encourage breeding or whether that has a detrimental impact on the breeding. So at the moment, that's the work that we're doing, and the Department of Environment and Science and Innovation are supportive of that work, and we don't have any plans at all to do any more work, but we're open to talking to the community if there's any additional ideas that we need to consider.
Thank you very much, Ali. The third question we have is, with our rapidly growing community in Agnes Water, there is a desperate need for bicycle paths for both safety and tourism. What can council do? So for this question, I'm going to pass it to Mark Francis, our General Manager of Assets and Environment.
Hi, everybody. The answer is build more cycleways and footpaths, but it's not quite as simple as that. We have recently undertaken our active transport strategy consultation, which had a tremendous response, particularly from Agnes Water in 1770. I think maybe about 25–30% of our respondents were from here. So it's obvious that it's a really key focus for the community for us. We're downloading and digesting that information just now. Our intention is to go to the boardroom and speak to our councillors before Christmas with the results of that, but also to give them a chance to review our previous footpath and cycleway strategy, which dates from some years ago, 2017 at least. Now, that had around about 78 priority footpaths to build around the region, including in this area, also across the region and in suburbs as well. Decision was made by council to focus on the highest priority works there, and then to seek appropriate funding through state government to build the rest. Now, unfortunately, the state government's funding has been focused very much on main roads and significant cycleways. So the big 3.5 metre wide 2-lane cycleways is where most of the funding has been. That's recently changed, so we are looking forward to being able to build some of the smaller scale footpaths and cycleways that are in our strategy just now with some of that funding. But essentially what we'll do is we'll go to the councillors, we'll talk about what the community has told us through the survey, we'll look at what we've delivered previously, what's still to be delivered from that old strategy, and then essentially ask council and community through council to work with us to build a 10-year plan to increase the connectivity in our networks. We're aware there's a number of missing links. We've had raised today the one from SES Grands out to the Marina. That's still missing, is it? We've not built that? No. Oh, Marina to 7070, that's still missing, obviously. So we've got a number of these around the region, and I know it's a frustration for community. We are desperately trying to address that. But in short, we'll be talking to council very, very shortly about the results of what the community has told us, and hope to agree the levels and priorities for investment over the next 10 years with them in the boardroom.
Thank you, Mark. Our fourth question is, what is council doing to reverse environmental degradation in conservation zoned lands in Agnes Water and 1770? So for this one, I will pass it to Brent Tangi, our Senior Natural Environment Officer.
Thank you. Yeah, we recognise Agnes Water has a lot of natural land and a lot of natural conservation reserves. Yeah, particularly in this area, some of the best conditioned ones. There's a lot of land to manage, a lot of natural bushland. So we just can't manage it all, essentially. So we have a prioritisation system, a biodiversity assessment framework. So we've been working through assessing what are the most valuable ones first, and that's that. So we've been setting that system up, and we will start to develop land management plans for each of those reserves on that basis. So that we recognise there's a lot of threats on these reserves. There's weeds and feral animals. There's unregulated sort of or unauthorised visitor management, visitor access. So, you know, probably people walking their dog and stuff is not so bad, but there's people who drive four-wheel drives and motorbikes and that sort of thing. And then some people camping in some of these areas. So that all has to be taken into account. And so, as I said, we can't manage every single piece. Council has so much land that we have to go down this prioritisation path. And so we will gradually work through the list, and as we get through the higher priority ones, we'll start addressing the next tiers down. So, yeah. I should also mention as well, we have been engaging with a lot of community environmental groups. So that's the other action we take to try and get some assistance. And there's some very keen groups around, so and they do lots of work, particularly in the Agnes Water and 1770 area. So, thank you.
Thanks, Brent. Now, our last submitted question is land clearing protection laws to be implemented to restrict the removal of large old-growth trees and significant native vegetation. So once again, I'll pass this one to Ali.
Thanks, Tim. So tricky question. The clearing of vegetation falls under various different jurisdictions. predominantly state government through the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries or through the Department of Resources. We don't have a lot of jurisdiction in that regard, and generally what we do if we become aware of stuff, we actually refer it on to them so that they have got the information to hand and they can take the necessary action. We do have some local law ability to address some of the issues where it's on council-controlled land that we do actively look at. And we also take a lot of action in terms of warnings and talking to people and educating them around the benefits to our region and our community and our well-being about retaining that vegetation. The other element that I'll just touch on with that is that we obviously permit work through our development services team, and so sometimes that work has conditions around what they can clear and can't clear and those requirements, and that work is also what we actively monitor and refer through to the state government teams as well.
Thank you. Sorry, just...
I just wondered, Ali, if changes occurred on that topic, how would the local community or neighbouring people or landowners be made aware of it?
Sorry, what type of changes do you mean?
So in the question or the statement, there was, I feel like it was suggesting to change land clearing from the current.
So,
I mean, obviously
land
there's
clearing
different-
protection, yeah. So
yeah, there's
council,
different rules in different places, so how would
so we do a lot of advocacy. So if the state government are looking to change or propose changes to the state legislation, we work with them. We can provide advocacy into what those processes look like and what things we're seeing in our region and what feedback we have. We definitely do that already. But in terms of what our current stance is that we don't duplicate state government legislation. If state government have already got the resources and the state legislation in place, there isn't a need to duplicate that into a local law process where it's a double up and then there's confusion around who has what jurisdiction.
So, sure.
Just on the second topic about the rainbow birds eating, whatever they are, bee eaters. You mentioned there talking about the dog on leash, off leash area that you're negotiating that or thinking about that as a topic. There is only 2 off dog leash areas in Agnes Waters. So I'm wondering if there's another option. If you are going to ban dogs off leash areas, have you got something in place where those dogs can go and run around off leash?
Thank you. So currently, a little while ago, we went through a local law amendment to the animal management local law, and that was proposed at that time to actually make it dogs on leash during the rainbow bee eater nesting season, which is August to February or January or February. There has been an administrative error occur when that local law was published. So what was resolved by council is the right dates. However, when it was published, it's been inversed. So currently it is already printed as dogs on lead during that period of time, but it's just been printed wrong. So at the moment, there is no plans to look at other alternative areas because they can still be there but on leash, and there is still other areas that they can access. I guess there is potential in the future and future growth plans to look at additional levels of service and additional areas, but it's not something we've got planned, I'm aware of at the moment.
I just thought it was a bit sort of harsh because the dogs have only really got the 2 areas to run. Generally the beach area, so that's the same time as the turtle breeding as well.
That's
so
right.
Most of the beach accesses are all dog on leash as well.
Yep.
I'm not sure about north of the surf club, whether that's on leash during that period as well. No, it's not.
That's off leash too. Yep.
Yeah, so
Year
that's,
round,
technically that's the only area in Agnes Waters where you can have a dog off the leash.
During
that,
essentially the summer area.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
It has been an issue that's been raised, I'm sure, with numerous councillors and myself, and we have discussed it, and I'm sure it'll be something that we'll look at in future. We know Agnes is growing, and we're going to need some more dog-friendly areas. So where we can put it, what sort of facilities, that sort of stuff. Something.
No worries. Thanks. Thank you.
Were there any other questions about the...
Just to talk about how we're going to do what Councillor Goodluck talked about, and I mentioned it a couple of times at this table, and this table may be sick of me saying it. We were successful getting some funding through our Works for Queensland programme, which is about a parks and open space life cycle plan, which you'll see us engaging with community to talk about the embellishment and hierarchies in parks. So how many parks do you want at this level? If you have this many parks, what do you want in them? Are they for kids? Are they for adults? Are they for recreation? Are they for fitness? Are they for dogs? We'll be coming to you and talking about that. We'll talk about bubblers. We'll talk about playgrounds. We'll talk about parkour. We'll talk about all these things that we could possibly talk about in parks, but we'll be engaging with the community to understand how you want to use your parks and open spaces and what you want them for. That'll also include potential connectivity for the foreshore and boardwalks, and essentially everything that you've ever wanted to talk to us about for parks and open space. Now's the time to do it when we start having these conversations.
Mark is a passionate advocate for parkour parks.
As you can tell.
Were there any other questions about the submitted questions that were just answered? No. If not, since we have a little bit more time, does anyone have any other questions that they'd like to ask? Any other topics they'd like to raise?
With the potholes, do the staff come down and fix every pothole they see in an area, or do they only do the ones that have been reported? Because otherwise they're making a couple of trips to fix them. And do we have an update on the Paperbark parking issue?
I would certainly like to think that the teams are patching all potholes when they turn up. I'll take that on board, and we'll follow that up. We should be. There's a level of service that talks about a certain size pothole and the likes before it gets patched and the likes. But if the teams turn up and there's a smaller pothole that doesn't necessarily meet the intervention level, it should still be getting patched. Yes.
I think on that, you see when the CSRs have raised particular potholes on the streets, you've got an assessor that'll come out, he'll go around, he'll mark it with some spray paint. But technically, because it takes so long for that to cycle through to the infrastructure guys to come down and fix that pothole, during that time more potholes have occurred, so they get missed. So they could be going down one street, but the potholes are on this side are marked, but the other ones on that side aren't marked, so they get missed.
That's
what's happening.
We've had conversations about marking potholes with paint. It has no value. Pick up the fact that there's a pothole in that location and the team head down and patch the pothole. So there shouldn't be any more marking of potholes with paint.
We're not doing that anymore.
No. It's all done electronically, GPS coordinated, so they know where the pothole is. They turn up on site and patch the pothole.
Yeah, we find the potholes ourselves.
I do too, and they
We try
certainly
and miss them, but we don't always.
yeah, they turn up after rain pretty often too. So
What?
I'll take that on board and chase that up with the team.
Which road do they clean? Clean up?
After rain.
After rain, potholes appear very quickly, as everyone knows.
Paperbark Car Park. So the current informal car park, which is within our road reserve, is not suitable as a car park. We've encouraged BHA to consider constructing one within their own reserve area at the moment, but the current plan is we will not be constructing any formal car park within the road reserve outside Paperbark, and it remains BHA's responsibility to undertake work within their own land.
Does that mean Bush Heritage Australia need to remove vegetation in the Bush Heritage Australia Reedy Creek Reserve to add a car park? Because it can't be where it previously was/is. Like I understand what you're saying, but I'm trying to understand the solution.
The solution would normally involve somebody who is providing the attraction to deal with the traffic movements within their own property. So that would, by definition, require some clearing.
But you do understand they're a non-profit group doing conservation, not a tourism business making money out of it, for example.
No, I understand that, absolutely, yeah.
So is that a best solution?
Would you like to propose another one? Do you have one
The
for
road
us?
reserve that is currently still getting used by people who walk across to Springs Road and access Springs Road on
Informally,
foot.
it's not open as a car park. We discourage it as a car park. We removed signage to try and stop people using it as a car park because the road environment does not support traffic movements in and out, reverse parking, and reverse into the traffic way at that time. It is not a car park. It should not be used as such. It's not signposted as such. It's not a car park.
So if I told you there's still people using it, are they just going to get booked and that doesn't even
No, they won't get booked because we don't have
help the
local
purpose? You know, like the attraction itself of Reedy Creek Reserve's Paperbark Trail is straight up there after Main Beach in Agnes Water, and people are travelling for it, people are learning from the billboards and information in there. You know, absolutely, they love it. Having that closed is detrimental to the town. Safety is obviously more important, but how is it that we can have a car park that will make it accessible and safe? Is the road reserve that is currently the gravel to just stay like that, and you propose a car park on the Bush Heritage Reserve past the road reserve?
Yeah, there's actually a sliver of our reserve as well on the other side of the road because of the way that cadastral stuff is done. It's quite annoying, but that's what's eventually happened. BHA can seek tenure over that and do it, but ultimately, obviously the trail wasn't subject to any assessment or approval. It was created. Had it been considered, traffic movements would have been conditioned for that type of attraction. And it's not been, and now we're faced with what we have just now. BHA chose to close it. They weren't forced to close it. They would need to consider traffic movements in reopening it. We've talked to BHA. I'm in contact with BHA about it, trying to find a solution, but there isn't one just now that involves that informal car park becoming formal.
I think when they opened it, the traffic movement wasn't such an issue, but certainly with the small boom that happened during COVID and the success of the walk itself. Yeah, so I guess I'm just trying to understand if it's a funding scenario from council's perspective or only about the road reserve and the location of the car parking possibilities.
We don't have in our long-term plans or funding, and it's certainly something we can discuss with council, and we have previously about providing a public car park for an attraction which isn't ours. As I said, had it been assessed during construction, it would have been conditioned to provide parking. And it hasn't been, so we're left with where we are just now.
I guess it's VHA's.
I believe all that. I'm trying to figure out a solution, and there doesn't seem to be a simple one.
Well, the solution for ratepayers is we could fund everything and build it ourselves and take ownership of it. It's not ours, it's VHA's. I guess we're open to working with them about what solution they want to see. It's not in our current plans for ratepayers to fund that. I guess if you've got different views to that, please let councillors know and we can take that into consideration. But we're open to working with VHA around what a potential solution might be. It's not council's asset. We understand the importance of it and we'd love to see it continue, but VHA sort of got to come up with a proposal as to how we can make it work, I guess.
And I guess that's their dilemma. Bush Heritage Australia don't have a pot of money. They have sought legal advice. They are, themselves trying to outwork what the possibility could be.
Yeah.
And even before the dollars, I guess it does feel difficult because it might be bulldoze some reserve to build a car park.
I think there's other options as well though, isn't there?
Well, any option for there would involve some clearing of the trees, because obviously they have the reserve for the purpose of conservation, and they have a purpose as Bush Heritage Australia to maintain that and sustain that. But it's a dilemma, isn't it? I don't have an answer for you just now, Amber, or the community.
Dilemma. You
It's a
heard it here
dilemma
first.
wrapped in an
10 months of the dilemma is, quite stifling in my personal opinion.
If someone took a bike tour over there, would the bikes be prohibited to park in the same area?
It's not a car. It should be parked in there.
At all? So not even
It's not
push
it's
bikes?
just the side of the road.
It is just the side of the road. And look, we nobody's listening to this, right? While it was open, it was something that we tolerated. It was something we didn't like tolerating because of the safety issue. As soon as BHA told us they were closing and needed, because they were worried about the insurance aspect and the liability aspect, that's something that allowed us then to move our tolerance to, well, if we're going to reopen, we need to do this properly. And if we do this properly, generally, we would ask the operator to deal with the traffic movements within their own property. So that's kind of how we got to where we are just now. But you're talking to BHA, I'm still talking to them as well. We're still trying to figure it out.
I mean, surely there's enough room for 6 car parks. There's never more than 6 cars there. But they're still not reopening. The reopening of the area is not whether they have a car park or not a car park.
It's their liability that they're worried about.
I guess it's their asset.
Yeah.
What do you mean, Natalia?
It's their asset. It's not just about a car park. They didn't close it because they didn't have a car park. They closed it. Well,
No, they closed it because of the insurance liability, because the traffic movements were a safety issue. So the insurance wasn't comfortable with that liability. We were talking about liability before. Liability ruins the world, but it's a reality.
So they're not actually concerned about liability on the walk, it's just the park.
well, this is for them to answer
Yeah,
anyway.
you need
It's
to
not.
speak to BHA
It's
direct.
not our asset.
This is just from our point of view.
Hence why I am interested it was raised today, because I do feel like council are very much part of the solution. Whilst I appreciate what you're saying about the road reserve and their land and how normal attraction would operate, that's what it is that you're suggesting, that if they were to reopen a walk, they're happy to reopen, they need to get rid of some of their reserve and make it a park.
Well, there's a sliver of reserve between their reserve and the road reserve, which goes over the side. So we have mentioned that we wanted to, if they wanted to see tenure of that park, we could represent the state. So technically they retain their reserve, but you not their reserve.
And would that not present any safety issues crossing the road, being that it's...
Not at all. Sorry, not at all, because it would be subject to a development application, because it's a material change of use to provide a car park, which means it would have to get planning consultants in, make an application, do a traffic management study to make sure that people are safe, and then that would be conditioned as part of their development to do the car park. It's not just a case of clearing and putting gravel down, because that doesn't solve the inherent risk. Well, add that to your list. I imagine there's a number coming, because we've already got one underway.
Were there any other questions? No? All right. Then I guess we'll finish up this section by just doing a bit of a general announcement. Mark, don't go too far.
Sorry. Ta-da! We'd already talked about this because of a number of pointed questions that we received. An update on the Agnes Carpark, Agnes Street Car Park, which has been a saga, which has been too long in the making. We are currently working with our planning consultants, our planning department, and our legal advisors to deliver a slightly smaller footprint on Agnes Street Car Park, given the costs that came back with the construction that was conditioned by the Planning and Environment Court. So it will be slightly smaller than planned, and will probably meet some of our community expectation, which was raised first time around. So we're still hoping to break ground and have that constructed in the second half of this financial year. Excitingly though, we are just about to execute on the second part of this design, which is the Jeffery Court part, which will provide a number of reverse angle parks, a brand new boardwalk constructed parallel to it, which will help to immediately alleviate some of the parking concerns before Christmas. we're so popular down here, we know we can't solve every problem and we can't provide enough capacity for all demand, but you'll see some shovels getting put in the ground and some work getting done very shortly on Jeffery Court, which will help to alleviate that while we outwork the planning and environment issues with the main car park.
Okay. That wraps up the...
This one's a bit sort of out there, looking down the future. 1770, as our town and community grows and more holiday makers come here, it just becomes a roadblock all the way through to 1770. There's not enough car parks down there or access. I have something that I'd like to propose for, you know, obviously going to cost millions of dollars, but making that into a one-way road all the way through 1770 up round the, you know, up the top, around the water tank, and then come back down through the power line reserve on the other side of the Marina. I know it's, you know, out there, but then you could open up car parking all the way along the Esplanade at 1770 there. At the moment, you've probably only got about 30 or 40 car parks through that whole area. And it's, you know, some have got white, yellow lines, so you can't park on one side, you've got to park on the other side. And there's really not enough room for one car park and two cars coming either way. So I can just see it only getting worse and worse in the next 10 or 20 years. Somewhere down the track, I'm wondering if there's proposal of something like a one-lane road to go through and around.
Imagine how many more houses you could put up through there.
Well, look at the rates, exactly. They could, you know, who knows?
It's a good point, and we are very constrained, obviously, in what we can do with traffic. We do in our long-term plan have a western bypass from up near the new shopping centre out, which will provide that very connectivity you're talking about. So there's already a road reserve essentially lined out there.
You're talking behind the shopping centre?
Yep.
You know, I'm talking about 1770.
Yep, so it will provide a connectivity
So that,
around.
the one you're talking about won't come out at Points North?
Eventually, as we,
Yeah, so
as future development will,
that's only a little
yeah,
corner of Agnes.
we're talking longer term development though as well, but
Okay.
it's certainly part of the future traffic planning.
Yeah,
And we're,
okay.
yep.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and thank you for everyone who submitted questions or asked a question today.